to Jai Long, and this is Make Your Break. Whether you're a big-hearted creative or an aspiring entrepreneur, let's take action on your dreams, reconnecting you with your why and giving you the how. I'm here to dish out actionable mindset tips and fun industry secrets to help you blow up your biz. From eye-opening reality checks to motivational gold, no two episodes are ever the same. So tune in weekly, skip the FOMO, and let's dive into the deep together. Hello. Okay. Check. I'm here with Ziggy. We're going to have a big conversation today about music, his career, all the things he's been up to. Welcome. How are you?
I thought I'd hit all the cliches and I would turn up in boardies with sandy feet.
And zinc.
And zinc. I think I got some of it off. I've spent all of too much time in the sun the last couple of days. So,
that's awesome.
It's good to do these things before you do a podcast, just to make sure staying true to roots.
Yeah. It's real interesting. Like when you listen to your music and everything, I think a lot of people imagine you just surfing all the time. Is that true? Is that all that happens?
No. It's a conversation I was just having with a friend yesterday. I've had this conversation the last couple of days with different musos and different people in town. It's definitely, I'd say very blue collar. And so I'm lucky to have a lot of more free time these days, I guess. But I still tend to feel it because I just love, I do love getting after it. And there can be a bit of a perception with music or arts that being excited about business and trying to do well and I guess really hustle, which is I guess maybe something that's quite common in maybe more of the American music scene, so to speak. But for me, it's like I always that 10,000 hours kind of rule was something that always was on my mind and still applies today.
Yeah. Hey, what I want to ask you and what I sort of want to dive down, I actually did homeschooling as well for a long time. And I know you did homeschooling. And I actually want to dive into when you first started your career as a musician, what business knowledge did you actually have? Or did you have some sort of naivety that kind of helped you believe that there was no rules and you could go in and essentially create your own label and build your own career? So just homeschool, how do you think that's affected your whole career?
So I think homeschooling, so I was homeschooled till I was 13. Didn't sit inside a classroom. I do remember one of the first classes I turned up at, and I had long blonde surfy hair at this time, so people didn't know that I was like the nerd that I was. And so I was, I slipped into the system pretty fine. I feel really immensely grateful to have had those formative years, particularly as in some ways girls at that age are also a lot tougher and grow up more quickly. Truly, I think that's the case. And so I think if you're a creative guy, I think it can be something that you could get squashed, because you're trying to fit in and you're trying to amongst your peers. But I didn't have to do that as much. I was lucky to have a big family, very supportive, kind of us being unique individuals, and that was a beautiful thing. Homeschooling gave us this outside kind of perspective where I guess you didn't know the rules. I've talked about this as a bit of a theme the last couple of days. When you don't know the rules, you don't have to learn how to break them.
Totally.
And that's that's an immense gift, because instead of this is the way it's done, this is how you start your career, this is how things have to be. When you approach it with that naivety or the innocence and the lack of knowledge, it's something that you don't have to then say, okay, well, that chord can't come after this chord. I didn't know. I still don't know. Still don't know technical. I still only play by ear. Still only largely I don't know the keys that a lot of my songs are unless someone tells me. I still don't know the rules, and that to me is really important when it comes to trying to innovate, because that mental barrier of this is how things are and how they have always been and how they always will be is something that's an immense thing I think an immense thing in all industry, but creative, what I have knowledge of in the creative industry has been hugely powerful to not know the rules, and therefore I did not have to learn how to break them first.
Yeah, there's so much unlearning to do for people, you know, because like a lot of people don't realize, like when you go to school, you are taught to stand in line, put up your hands, wear the same thing as everybody else. You get in trouble if you do wrong, or if you don't do good in your grades, things like that. And I know for myself, I was never told no, or I can't do, or I'm doing it wrong, or I never failed a test because I didn't really do tests and things like that. And so, you know, for myself, going into being a creative business owner, I find it so easy because I think so different. I don't have to unlearn a lot of things that a lot of us are kind of constrained to.
Absolutely. And just to think, like, for the 3 years I went to school, and even noticing your kind of subconscious shift on how things are, that's imagine 12 years of that. 12 years of this is how things are, and this is how it's going to be, and you're going to have to go to uni to have to do this, you know. And also people investing 12 years of their young lives, and families investing those 12 years of their children's lives and family lives to then have to inverted commas go to university to then get a job. Like, if you think about this expanse of that, and as far as it's 10 years this summer that I quit my last job to do music explicitly and only, you know, like that was the last time, 2011, 2012, when I just picked up the guitar and just started playing. I was working cafe jobs and picked up gigs pretty quickly, just doing little cafe shows and little restaurant shows. And, you know, but 10 years, you know, like if I had taken the uni route, so to speak, which isn't the wrong way, it's just to say that it's
just a very different way.
It's a very different way, but like, let's say I did that for the first 4 years or 5 years. Like, man, the first 4 or 5 years were so important. You know, some of the most important years of my career thus far has been those first 5 years, you know, thinking from 2013 when I quit my last job and just was going to do music somehow, some way. And to think about that to 2018, I mean...
There are also the years that you had the most hustle in you, huh? Like you finish school and literally there's no fear. You've got nothing to lose and everything to gain. And if you're sitting in the classroom with all that energy built up, like it would be pretty hard for you to come out and have that same hustle and same drive.
That blue collar mentality, like this is something like, but this is just for me personally. But you know, people still now people are partying, and I will be there writing songs. You know, like I'd finish the show and write songs, and I would drive. I was telling one of the guys in town last night, I was like, I would play a show in Byron at night, busk on a Friday night at Mocker on Lawson Street, and then I would drive to Sunshine Coast, or, you know, sometimes I'd drive to Sunshine Coast, play a morning market, and I'd drive back and play another gig in Byron. On Sunday, you know, like I was just... Because
you're hungry for
hell for leather, going for it, and put myself, you know, there's something about swinging the bat, you know, and you just get better. You through that repetition, give yourself the best shot, you know. And I was an on-the-go learner, you know, different people learn differently. You have to see what works for you. And for me, sometimes it is best that I don't know, because then I have less fear and more, perhaps, creativity to a situation. And that really helped me when that was just the way that I naturally learned. And for sure, there's very few accidents, man, when it comes to music. Like, you put your best foot forward, and I have been immensely lucky. There's no question about it. But when you add in hard work, and you see, like, you know, Dermot Kennedy comes to mind, for example, who I don't know that well, but know his drummer pretty well, Mihal Quinn. And basically, you know, I watched them play to 100 people in Oslo in 2018, maybe January 2018, in the snow. I watched them play to 100 people, and they now are the biggest, you know, Irish act ever. Yeah. You know, and like, these guys just hustled. And so there's definitely sometimes, I just don't think there's anything that's had that through this. The one thing that maybe has stayed the same through our multiple generations and things that have changed is that there is for responsible and ongoing, you know, sustainable business kind of practice, where you have a good footing in your chosen career, that kind of putting in the work, and it being 10 years, I've been working pretty hard at this, like really hard. And that's why I have what I have, and that kind of to some people it looks like it was an overnight thing, but it's, you know, just was not at all. As I'm sure you can relate with your work.
Yeah, man, it's the overnight success that took my whole life to get that overnight success. Like, it's so funny. When you first started and you're sort of going into all this and we sort of established like your actual background in education and things like that, just learning on the go, did you have any business knowledge whatsoever? And what did that look to you? And did it even look like a business, or were you just like, I need to make a thing happen? And that was basically the thought process you had?
At first, it was like, my logic was really sound. It was that I was going to be just as broke, but have more time to surf.
Yeah.
So that was my first solid career choice.
See, that's what I love to hear though, because like, I think so many people overcomplicate everything, but like my first business was the same thing. I was like I had a cafe, so I was selling coffee. So I was like, if I sell it for more than it cost me to make, then I've got a business. And that's all it was.
Exactly. And I think that's something that can be lost in, particularly in music, for example, is that kind of really, okay, if I can buy this many CDs,
yeah,
like, and if I got to sell 100 of them to break even, okay, then I've got a business. Like, I will be able to put, because I had to put fuel in my car. You know, I lived in my van at that time. You know, once I bought a van, I lived in my van, and so like, it was there was no backstop in that sense. And so I was super pragmatic, and that's what led me to do house shows and backyard shows, because I could try and get paid $200 maybe from the pub who didn't necessarily want to book me because I didn't do covers. Or if I could play to 10 people. If I played to 20 people at $10, which is what I would do at the start, that was the same, but the environment was better, more intimate, actually made lasting connections with these people. And so again,
allowed you to be creative as well.
It wasn't how is this going to be I really did take a pretty quality approach when it came to the settings that I wanted people to be in with me.
Yeah.
But my version of quality was something that was intimate. You know, it wasn't the place that was fancy. It was like backyards and houses, but it was stuff that was very make believe and, I guess, not normal, against the rules.
Yeah.
You know, stuff that people just weren't doing. At least, you know, that we had Matt Corby and Nick Saxon who took me on the first house show. You know, something that's very popular now, but at that time it was still, no one was doing it probably consistently. And that's where I was like, okay, so then I don't have to ask the pub for money.
There's no rules,
you know. And we were creating these really beautiful memories where, you know, there was a lot of trust involved. There was strangers. I was turning up to strangers' houses, host other strangers in their freaking house. Yeah. You know, and that's incredible. But we all took that leap of trust together, and then you're all rewarded. Yeah. And so it was just like it was a really beautiful thing, and it was something that was just a really exciting unfolding journey. I didn't have a big plan, but a lot of those, like you just kind of touched on, those very simple, pragmatic, like, because again, like I committed at 18, which is a crazy thing. At 18, I was like, I'm going to be my, like, I'm going to do it, you know. And I had a Corolla, a guitar, and like a busking PA. Yeah. You know, I didn't even have that. Like, I had nothing. I had no grounds to stand on that I was going to pull it off. But to me, it was some of the most joyous moments, you know, when you take those risks and you free fall. And, you know, I had nothing to lose and everything to gain. And I was lucky to have my folks who backed me up on that. And as the business grew, I just dragged people into it as far as, so once I created a big enough problem, I had twice, because at first I was self-managed, self-booked. Totally. Produced the CDs, organised the invoices, set up the events online. At one point, you know, I did it all, which was unsustainable in every sense of the word. But I created a big enough ecosystem. That's a better word instead of saying problem. Like, I created an ecosystem that required 2 people. Yeah. Then I could afford my sister, who's still my, you know, who I co-founded the label with. It's amazing. You know, she in 2015 started managing me, and still my manager today. And I created this kind of ecosystem or microsystem enough to have that. And then once we grew that out, got my dad involved, who's had, you know, decades of experience in being an entrepreneur and a business owner himself, in IT in particular, which is hilarious. You know, so we dragged him in at first on a bit of accounting, and then we dragged him in as a CFO, and then got the auntie to come in when we started the label. And it's just been this kind of, you know,
Just bringing everyone along the ride with you.
Yeah. So I like, my job now is to like provide some ideas, make the mess, go tour, and then, you know, stay healthy and happy for the people.
Yeah, I love that. You know, when most people sort of start out when they're doing anything, so I know a lot of people will go like, I'm going to go and play at the pub, and then hopefully someone's going to see me play from a record label, and then they're going to give me a deal, or hopefully someone's going to tell their friend that they've seen someone, and there's a lot of hope and chance and stuff like that. And I feel like with your approach of just going like, well, if I am the record label, then I can give myself a chance and make my own break. And then from there, I'm going to obviously get bigger problems, and with bigger problems, I'm going to have bigger solutions, and with bigger solutions, you know, everything sort of grows. So for you, instead of being fixated on looking for a record deal, did you ever think of like, well, nothing's ever going to stop me. I'm just going to do it myself?
I think I look at so many moments, and I'm so glad that I hadn't thought through all of what was sensible and reasonable and let things unfold. You know, that was important. It's important to think through a lot of things, and it was important to seek guidance on stuff where it's pretty black and white, i.e. legal stuff. But I had this really ironically punk mentality where I was like doing all ages shows. Like I was big on all ages gigs, and because I was 16, graduated because I got to finish school a year early from being homeschooled. So I was 16, getting paid cash, glassing at collecting glasses at a music bar. You know, and I felt that I couldn't see music for like a year and a half with all the people that I went to school. I couldn't even go see music. You know, and I worked in a music venue at that time, you know, and long story short is like, so that was a passionate thing for me. And then I just was really, I actually was like, like I say, ironically, and not to the, you know, always had the blonde surf, you know, singer-songwriter thing, but I was really punk in my approach. Like I was really protective of, I just want to play music to people direct. I want to cut out all the noise, the middleman. I didn't want the articles. I didn't want the label. I actually kind of despised that. Totally. And I was like, I'm playing music with my people, and I do not care to have any of you and the toxic industry involved. Yeah. And thank goodness I've been, by necessity, also matured a little bit enough to see it's not all toxic, because now we are a part of the industry. We are a fully fledged independent label and publishing house. So now we are and working with other independents, and you know, so it's not all that. But at that time, I was just really protective and really that was my goal, was like to play direct to people, you know. And we were, I remember doing you know, the Palais in Melbourne, you know, course. And sold out the Palais in like 2017 without radio, without any marketing budget, without anything, venue. You know, with I don't know how big our team. We hadn't formed the label, so like maybe two or three people in total, like crazy stuff. But it was just direct to people, and it was really underground and like immensely grassroots, and it was just this super quality group of people that really championed my music that I owe. You know, that we did it. It was our thing that we grew together. As I just lapped the country, we just kept growing into bigger venues. It was just this kind of, and so it just wasn't in my interest to pander to that. I was just like, because also, this is the other thing, in a really pragmatic sense, what more could I have wanted? As in, so, sure. I got to buy the bigger van, you know, and I was committed to touring, so I got to buy a bigger van that was safer to drive, it was like better to sleep in, all those things. I still, you know, it's parked out the front now, I still got it. And like, I had that, I was doing something I loved, I was surrounded by people I really cared about that I was touring with, you know. Once, you know, a couple of years in, I could afford to have those people on the road. So like, what more did I want, kind of thing? Like, that wasn't a stepping stone. That was like, everything I wanted, I was achieving by playing to 50 people in a backyard. And I'm lucky, because maybe 10 years on that would get old, but each step of the way, I haven't been like, this is the one thing in music. I've had a certain amount of grace that in other areas of my life, for sure, sometimes you like look and you want to do better in this area, you want to do better in that area, you want to iron out your creases. But when it's come to music, I've largely felt immensely just blessed, and none of those steps were things that were just to get somewhere.
Yeah.
They were the thing. They were what I was going for.
Yeah.
And as a result, people felt that. And, so I've been saying this a little bit of late, but I was doing A for A. It wasn't A for B. It wasn't I'm doing this to get the big record label deal. It's like, I'm doing this for doing this. This is the point.
This is the end
And
game.
that's something that was just natural to me. And in music, not in all areas of my life, but in music was natural to me. And I feel grateful to have stumbled upon that, because I think I owe, even now, what I enjoy so much about my career, I owe to that mindset. It's like, I'm not, like right now, I'm not looking to, because we don't know what we're asking for. So I could be bigger. What does that mean? Can I still sleep in my van at the caravan park? Like, what more can I ask for? I played with Jack Johnson around Australia and I'm still sleeping in my van. Like, I have immense freedom, good people around me, get to go surfing, I'm healthy. So we must be careful what we ask for, because I've also been in positions, and you've been in positions, where you've got on paper what everyone wants and everyone around you would perceive as the thing to have. And that only means so much. You sleep in the same bed at night,
Of course.
So I've been happy to see that early on, and been given insight to just how much that is true, and how you sleep in the same bed whether you play to 100 people or 2,000 people, and so you got to do your work and your time and your relationships and your balance outside of your career. You have to have those things, otherwise it's just, those things are nice, but they're not everything.
It's real interesting. I've got this, I've shared this concept before a few places, where I've talked about, even though I grew up in government housing, and, we just had no money and everything, I've always perceived myself as rich. And so people never really understand this concept, but I've always said I was rich when I was young. We had so much love. I was rich when I got my first job and I was getting paid $3 an hour. I was rich the first time I did my apprenticeship and I was getting $5 an hour. I was rich, when I bought my first car that was 7 shades of yellow. And everyone's always seen me lucky and being rich. But what people don't realize is I was the one that decided I was rich. It wasn't anyone else deciding. And so because I decided it, people believed it as well, because, well, I mean, what else can you be, right? And so it sounds like it's sort of the same for you. It's like, well, I've decided I'm successful when I play to 20 people in the backyard. I decided that, so I am successful. And then from there, the next thing is I sold out the Palais Theatre. I am successful. And so as the bar rises, it doesn't really sound like you're trying to chase a bigger thing, but you have been successful from when no one was listening all the way through your whole career, and it's still continuing to go that way. Would you agree on that?
I think, you said it really eloquently. And I don't know, I've thought about how do you instill that in others? Because I've tried to communicate this. I've tried to communicate this concept of because I just felt that way. I can't say why. I think because if you're, particularly in music, if your experience with shows, if it's based on a numbers game, let's say with people, then the more people, the better, the more successful. But if it's based on something more personal and something that involves a quality of connection, or perhaps it's how you've managed to unveil more of yourself in songwriting. I wasn't in Germany playing to 20, 30 people in this DJ lawyer's house in Hamburg. Chris was his name, who's a legend. Yeah, Chris, super dunker. I wasn't there on my first show in Hamburg going,
no one's here.
I can't believe there's 30 people. I was there going, there's 30 people in someone's house
that want to hear you.
And so that's it's so powerful when that's the case. And like I said, I feel so, and I don't know, I think, upbringing certainly helps. And I think for a long time I've just known that you can play, and maybe that run in 2017 where I was just really burnt out, immensely burnt out, been going too hard too long. And it didn't matter. That was such a blessing in hindsight, because I was playing to thousands of people, sold out, the best venues I've ever played. And I was like, couldn't have been more unhappy. It was the biggest cliche in the world. I was just so broken. I wasn't even unhappy. I was just void of life force, you know. And so it didn't matter. It made it worse. So it was like, here is these people, and I don't even feel like I can give as much as I want to give to them right now. And so then what does it matter when you've got 3,000 people there? And so I guess that's where, as soon as it becomes about numbers, you know, as soon as it becomes about the amount of people, and I mean, there's people doing better than me all the time. There's people,
Always.
you know, like there's people I know who are doing better than me on all sorts of levels. But like, again, we ask for one thing, and we don't see the world that we're asking for. You know, we can ask for so many things, and we ask for an aspect. We don't ask for the whole picture. And so, like, I still have my freedom right now to like be here on the North Coast, just literally cruising in my van, which is still something that is my freedom.
Yeah.
That is a part of my freedom. And if that was taken away, I would have to learn to adapt. But I'm so happy that I can do that, you know. And so to ask to be, let's say, I know that even more people in Australia knew, let's say I was like, oh, right, 3 or 4 times the amount of people need to know in Australia. Like, would I be able to do that? Or would I have to live somewhere more private? Would I have to be a more private person? And so, yeah, I think maybe I'm just going through a phase at the moment where I'm like, be careful what you ask for, because you might, you think you know what you're asking for, but you might not. And
well, you know what's interesting? It's funny. Like, I feel like we'd both share this, but people like yourself, I've met quite others with the same kind of mindset, but we're always more scared of success than we are of failure. And so it's so interesting, and not many people understand this, but failure, you're not scared of failure because, I mean, how can you even fail unless you give up? Like, there is no such thing as failure, right? Like, you're going to keep going up, and you're going to do the show and you do the things. But then success, like, we think about that more so because it's like, oh man, that's going to change my life. Or I don't know how to deal with it because I've never seen it in my life. I've never seen anyone that I know being that successful, or like whatever it is, right? So then it's a whole new path that you have to forge yourself, and it's so scary. And I actually see a lot of people, and this is including myself, I hold myself back a lot just because of that fear. And I recognize that in myself, and I'm always continually thinking like, how can I get past this? And I know it's simply the fact that I just haven't seen anyone do it before, and I'm finding that hard.
Yeah, it's so funny, and you do see that in people who often maybe have achieved something, you know, like to see, but like you said, scared of that success, and what does that mean, and how do things change? And it is a new path, and it is crazy, you know, like there is, you know, because when you look to it, there are fewer examples of the Jack Johnsons, for example. There's fewer examples of that sort of person. There really is, who is that immensely successful in music. And there's many examples of people who, you know, really successful in their career, but their home life is trashed, or their well-being is completely out of whack. And it is easy, and I also find it hard to not be like, can you have it all? You know, and that's a big, like, I've had to check in on myself a couple of times to be like, hey, like, it doesn't just, I think when you're used to grinding, and you're used to just being like hustling, it's also sometimes like, let certain things be easy, you know?
Yeah.
And luckily with music, I've let songs coming to me, or songs, I've not been too scared of them being something people might like. Whereas it's easy in music to be like, well, I need other musicians to like it, and that doesn't mean other people like it. It doesn't even mean we like it. And so it is, you know, I wonder how many things are forged by, like, can I have it all? Because I feel like I have so much. Like, can I also have all those things that I dream of? Those private dreams, can I have that as well? You know? And, you know, the answer for all of us is probably yes, but for sure, getting over that hurdle of being like, well, I have all these things.
It's the mindset that you got to get through.
Can I dare to have more than I've even got now? You know, and for me, when that comes to mind, it's like the things that represent more that come to mind are so like so personal and just how you feel. And it's lucky. I mean, again, it's lucky to maybe I can afford that existential crisis kind of thing. Perhaps I can afford it because I'm lucky that I don't put a lot of stress around how my music needs to do. I've noticed that I kind of don't let there be a lot of like
expectations.
I've caught myself, like, it's funny, I'll find myself really caught up on something. Like, let's say just before a tour, I'll be really caught up on some other business, like, challenge. Really, really caught up on it. Really upset about it. And I've come to realize, I'm like, okay, I'm just deflecting. Like, I'm just a bit nervous about this whole tour. I just need to, like, sit down, ask for a pat on the back, have a little cry. And, like, it's just funny, like, seeing that. But, like, it's a really precious place where I'm, like, don't like to be stressing out about how it needs to be, you know? And I'm glad for that because there's just, I mean, even this last 18 months, the amount of, the last 3 or 4 years, but the last 18 months, the twists and turns of my music and things have happened I wouldn't have expected, including touring with Jack around Australia. Like, that's stuff that, like, wasn't on my radar. Recorded at Abbey Road late last year in maybe, like, September. Never on my radar. I never even had it on my bucket list, you know? And the opportunity came up and I was like, oh, yeah, I'll do that. You know, tour South Africa. It was just stuff that, and so being open to the way things might go is like so important, so important. And I'm happy. And I wonder, I'd like to know if it's the case for you. Like, do you feel like there's any avenue? Music's been the avenue for me that's like taught me a lot about, I guess, letting things happen. I've not stood in my own way a lot with music. Largely I've let things actually be as good as they can possibly be. Is there something in your life that's been like that you've leaned on as an example? Yeah,
for sure. I think I got this thing that I like to say, because a lot of people when I was growing up, throughout my whole life, always says, Jai, you're so lucky. I said, I know, I'm always in the right place at the right time all the time. Because for myself, like, I make sure that I am in the right place at the right time all the time. So I'm very much like, I go with the flow of everything, but I know the fact that if I'm not even in the room, nothing's going to happen for me. And so, of course, I was in the right place. I didn't know what was going to happen in that room. But the fact that what my effort was like getting over my insecurities and my self-doubts, extroverting myself into a space, meeting people, talking to people, or just being there, or whatever it is, and then hearing what the opportunities are, and then having the courage to say yes to things. And I think that in myself is probably one of the qualities that I love about myself, because it gets myself so far forward. But I do feel like in your situation, it's the same thing. Like, you're in the right place at the right time all the time. And people don't realize that you're living in your van, driving around Australia, like, for 10 years to be in that position, to be in the right place at the right time all the time. And so for myself, like, I'll have an example would be like, I remember there was a wedding, it was in Chicago, and they're like, can you come and fly to my wedding? Like, it's in Chicago, blah, blah, blah. And I said, I'm actually there in Chicago on that date, just worked out. And of course I lied. I quickly jumped on my computer and I booked a flight and I got myself to Chicago for that date. So I happened to be at the right place at the right time for that thing. And so, yeah, I think it's like having the willingness to, like, even if it didn't work out, it doesn't matter. I've always backed myself, and I'm willing to put myself into those places, which I find is really interesting, even with your career and like the mindset that you have of like where you are now and pushing forward and finding opportunities all the time, or allowing opportunities to come to you. Like, you didn't even see that Jack Johnson was on the horizon for you, you know, for this last tour in this last year. But you did put yourself in the position to allow that to happen. And it took 10 years worth of work plus to be conditioned to say yes to something like that, because too many people would fall back on the insecurities. Maybe there's too many rules, there's things in a way, there's so many other implications. Maybe they're already busy with something else and had other commitments, they couldn't move things around. Where I feel like when someone like yourself is like, well, I do, but I'm moving things, I'll move heaven and earth, and we're making this happen.
That luckiness, I think, would be a common tying thread. You know, one of my favorite quotes my sister has as a sign off. It's probably yes, if not one of it's one of my favorite quotes of all time. It's by Seneca, this Stoic writer from eons ago, and it's luck is where opportunity meets preparation.
Yeah.
And that for me just says it all. And when I say I'm lucky, I mean it in both. I feel I've been like,
You're blessed.
Blessed, and I equally feel like I had prepared, an opportunity presented itself, And I think like a fun story that's very vivid for me was in 2015. The first time I went to Europe and went on a backpacking trip with my family. Something really specific. Maybe we went on a backpacking trip to Europe. Mum went back to Hungary for the first time. We all went, and basically took my guitar, box of CDs, my backpack. I said, "Hey, I got a free weekend. Would anyone host me in Norway? Just do a little backyard show." And basically, the 2 years prior, 2013, 14, 15, I'd been primarily busking in Byron and playing these little cafe shows every night, and playing the Northern front room, 9 till 12 on a Monday or a Tuesday. And, these sisters would come along, and one of them was Amelia, who's now, now a good friend. And they would come along. She worked at one of the other stores, and that was like, the locals would come down on like a Monday or a Tuesday because everyone's working hospo over the weekend. They'd come see these shows, and she reached out when I put this post up. "Hey, I can come to Norway this weekend. Would anyone host a show?" And she said, "Yeah, I can. Would love to." And when I realized who it was, like, this is a familiar face, fantastic. Halfway across the world. So I fly there, and we're on the train to Larvik, which is about 3 hours south of Oslo, to do this house show, which to our knowledge was the first house concert in the town that had ever happened. And
in the country.
Yeah. Let's say in the country. We'll fact check that later.
Yeah.
It was in Larvik, to our knowledge, this little coastal town. And on the way there, I'm there with, a colleague of hers, and we're on the train, and someone the following day has cancelled at the festival that's that weekend in Oslo. And the person I'm on the train with is Amelia, and Amelia's in Larvik. The person I'm on the train with, who's like assisting me to get to where I'm going, his cousin's the booking agent for the festival. And he goes, "Well, I'm actually on the train with this Australian artist who's doing this backyard show." And so next thing you know, I'm playing this Norwegian festival, and I met the person that then I booked my first Norwegian tour with. And that all happened, trailing it back. That was all because I decided to turn up and busk.
Yeah.
It's because I decided to do that, and from literally playing on the street, that was how that happened. That's crazy
amazing,
to think,
right?
That's crazy to think, because
you happen to be in the right place at the right time at that time.
Right time. And that's one of the best examples I can.
Yeah.
I mean, that's one of the best examples I can possibly. There's actually there's too many of those. I feel like
your whole career be built on that, wouldn't it?
Exactly. Yeah. And so it's that just is me I think confirming that mindset of where you feel lucky, and you also it's like I said, I would like nothing more if there's any true path that I have, is I would like to take, and I've been reflecting a lot on this 10-year mark, those things that are very natural, perhaps to your approach on luck and what you tried to do with business, those very youthful things that were kind of brilliant in hindsight, because but you didn't know, you're just going for it. Not. And those things, man, the older you get, the further you get into your career, you have to keep unlearning.
Yeah, and reinventing yourself.
Keep
throwing yourself back into it. One thing I've noticed lately is with people that are super successful, that I believe in my definition of success, to let's say someone that's sort of struggling a little bit more. The people that struggle always say what's the ROI on this? How much money are you going to make back? How are you going to make money on this? That idea, who's going to pay for it? And they're always obsessing over these things. And the people that are super successful, it's always well, I'm going to do the thing regardless. And then the thing's going to work out. And I think about that. It's you went busking. You went literally on a train in the middle of nowhere to go to probably play with 20 people in the backyard, where most people would be why are you doing this, right?
I would have definitely, if I think financially, booking a flight, I don't even know if there was
No, it didn't work out.
I'm saying, it wasn't, on an economic level, it made no sense whatsoever.
Yeah. And so everyone that I know that's super successful, they do it regardless, and it never makes any sense. And then that's how they get into this space where they happen to be in the right place at the right time all the time, because they're not looking for ROI. They're not searching around looking how they're going to make money out of this, or looking for anything more than I've got a calling, I've got to go and do this, I'm serving people, that's my purpose. And then from there, there's opportunities that always come your way. Now, I think it's just such a beautiful thing. And I think as human beings, I don't know why, but we always look for threads in conversations with successful people that we deem successful. And we always try and find the common denominator so we can sort of follow that path. And for me, it's the thing that I've noticed. No one successful has ever asked me, what's the ROI on that jar? Why would you do this? How are you going to make your money back? They always say, that's a dumb idea. Definitely do that. That sounds amazing, you know? And they just know it's going to work out. As long as you're passionate and you're out there making something happen, it's going to work.
I think it's that intrinsic value, you know, that someone actually is pursuing it because it would be something that would, it's something that has to happen, you know. It makes me think about the little poetry book that I put together. And that was a really good refresher on, I was doing that for doing it. I was writing poetry for writing poetry, not because I was necessarily going to do a book and necessarily delve down that path, and I did in the end. But the first reason I did it, it wasn't because, because it'd be, you know, this makes me think about songs in particular. Springs to mind saying about songs. If you asked me to sit down and write a song, you said, okay, like, can you please write a song? Like, so I need you to write a song a day. Or I want you to go sit down and write a song. Like, that's daunting.
Yeah, it's hard work.
Whereas, like, if you're like, hey, like, can I go sit down and always write a song? Absolutely not. And it would be a lot of pressure to actually be a bit of a, like, I think it would be a bit of a hindrance. But if it's to go and express myself through writing or playing, like, that I can do every day.
Yeah, you know, and there's
no
expectations on it.
That's very different to being like, I need this outcome, you know. And there's so many, I mean, I don't know how many, and it's so many, particularly in music, and it would be the same in photography. It's just like, oh my God, the amount you invest and risk, and you just run risks, you know, constantly. And that would be something that I think, you know, you take big risks, you can have big rewards, you know, and you take little risks, you're probably going to get little rewards. Like, you kind of get what you're putting out there. And
have you always had that mindset? Like, even when you first started?
I think even more when I first started.
Yeah.
I think that's the thing that creeps in once you've been involved in business long enough.
Because now you stand to lose something.
Yeah, it's like, and there's other people involved, you know, and you know, like, I co-founded the label with my family, and of course you start to, more than me, you start to be like, okay, like, I want this to work for everyone.
Yeah,
you know?
for
and
sure.
that's to say, like, because for me, and I get this impression with you, it's like, you know, like, I will still, like, if you ask me to, like, if you're like, okay, everything's gone to absolute, you know, everything's completely fallen over, and like, you've lost everything, you're gonna have to, like, live in your van and go start again. Like, I could, and that's why I love to still go busk today. Like, I still know that I can. I've got the grit and ability to do that. But you do, it's just, man, the safety factor starts to creep in, and it's so insidious. The safety factor does, and there's like, it's funny, you know,
there's actually studies shown where it shows people if they like where their ceiling of success is, and it always comes to where they deem themselves where they've got too much to lose. So it gets like, basically get to this pivotal point, and then all of a sudden you got too much to lose. So for instance, if you're a day trader and you're just trading money and you're on the share market and you get to $1 million, a lot of the times, like, if you deem that's a lot of money, now you stand to lose $1 million, where before there wasn't much. And so with success is the same thing. So we hustle and we put everything on the line until we get to this threshold where we deem we got some success. And then from there we start the driving factor is, it's harder and scarier for us to lose something than it is to gain something, like the reward to gain something a little bit more. So for instance, if you're like, and it comes back down to this, if you're down to your last $100 and I said to you, like, hey, I've got an opportunity here, it's 50-50, you might lose the 100 or you could double your 100. Most people will say, I'd rather not lose my 100 than double it, because if I lose it, I stand to lose, like, tonight's dinner, where I'm going to stay, everything else. But if I gain 200, it doesn't do much for me. to be honest. And so when you get to that level of success, it's like, I could gain a bit more, but if I stand to lose everything, I mean, that's a lot. And so people that get the tremendous amount of success, when we see like A-grade celebrities and things like that, their threshold is much higher, where they're willing to risk more and more. Or so, say, for instance, someone like Elon Musk, willing to like, it gets 100 million and that's not even enough. So then he just like keeps risking, gets to a billion, not even enough. Got to 100 billion, it's not even enough. He'll probably get to a trillion, because in his mind, he hasn't made it yet. And so he stands to gain so much more than he loses. Yeah, I find it fascinating.
It is. It's really, it's funny how, to me, it ties back to this, this thing of safety, and also your confidence in being able to go and make it again. You know, if you're like, oh, man, I just think this conversation just makes me think to like the amount I had to lose. Like the amount that particularly, and this is why people sign to major labels, is because when you got to front a tour, or front the footings for your
next album,
and everything like that.
Merch,
and
anything.
It's so funny because what it takes, and this is probably the same, I can imagine being a lot of business, but it's like I've talked to other people about it. It's like, for example, the 10 grand threshold was something that was like, if you could somehow save up enough and just not spend it on drinking, don't spend it on drugs, just do your work, get out of there. Like, you still get to have a couple of beers if you want, just don't be silly, you know, like, go do it. If you could get to that point, you could get the CDs, you could get the flight to Europe, you could do this, and you could just reinvest it. It's just funny, there's just this threshold where, and then you could keep reinvesting it in again and again and again. But if you didn't get to that threshold, then it was just always, then you get the loan, and then you just were just, and that's not to say that's the wrong way to go. It's just to say that, like, oh man, like, if I think about, there's risks I can't even discuss that, like, I look back and go, man, I was great, but I had nothing to lose.
Yeah, there's nothing to lose. Yeah,
and that's the thing to retain, and that's the thing that's, I think, immensely challenging to.
Do you do anything right now to sort of re-spark that for yourself? You know, in your own mindset and everything, actively.
I've just been reflecting a lot before the next big, like the rest of the year, which is with a lot of touring and a lot of shows. And I've just been reflecting upon reflecting a lot about the things that we're talking about now, and again, taking opportunities. Like, you know, bumped into you busking hilariously, as we bumped into the beach the other day, which is why I'm here talking to you now. Case in point, it's short answer, no. However, I am reflecting upon those moments that you have that are your initial reaction before you grew up. Your initial reaction is probably something more akin to like your inner child about, like, I've got nothing to lose. That's still the case today for you, for me, like, you know, and
for sure.
And lucky, and look, and people have, without a doubt, and people have when you got like little mouths to feed, for example, when you got a family, like that's like, I said, like seeing all the people around me who do have families, like it's a different level, like as far as it's a different level, and I'm still at a place where like I'm not, but what I can understand in small portion, these people are grown adults, they can look after themselves, but I do feel responsible to my family. I do want my family, my friends who work at the label, like I want us to have the best thing, you know?
Of course. And
I'm reflecting at this point upon shifting and re-engaging, because it's easy, man. It's like, it's so easy to start taking minimal risk options, and part of your soul just dies.
Yeah.
It's like you know, well, it's just that
the
you receive.
Also, the second you take anything for granted as well.
Yeah.
Hey, get
Absolutely.
comfortable. You know it's going to work. You walk out, you play a song, you know it's going to work.
It's just, yeah, so it's that for me, and I could be hanging too much on the 10-year thing, but for me, it feels like a very reflective period, and I've needed to just like keep reflecting, and that's been a part of just even coming down here from up north, you know, based in Queensland these days, and just even coming down here and just walking some of those same paths and having these conversations. I know, okay, it's not like I didn't put out a hat busking. There'd be nothing wrong with it, but I didn't put out a hat busking on that. Like, there's no besides a nice little clip for social media, there's no, like, I just really like doing it.
Yeah.
But what I like most is when you put yourself there, you get to have inspired conversations and someone will say something, remind you, or, you know, re-inspire you or remind you of something that you've forgotten. And that's like, that's where I'm at. And the thing I take from this conversation is just like, what exactly do you have to lose is the big question for everyone.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, what do you, what do you
Well,
have
hey,
to
what
lose?
if you lost your passion? I mean, you stand to lose that if you don't keep pushing, and then that could be the death of everything.
You're like a Buddha with bangs, man.
I'm just thinking right now. I'm like, what do you stand to lose? I'm like, if I lost that, like,
that's not your new Insta bio.
Yeah.
5 minutes after we're done here,
Yeah.
Buddhas with bangs. That's, you know, anyway, that's our new venture. No, it's, man, you're right. That is the scariest
Because
thing.
that would not only would your family wouldn't actually care if you lost money and if everything lost, because, you know, things move on. But if you actually lost your passion for what you're doing, I believe your family would actually care so much more.
Oh yeah,
if it turned into a machine.
I'm so lucky that so lucky that they like, and that's something I'd say, you know, surrounding yourself with people that care more about you than the thing that you're selling or the product or the song, you know, like people. And formatively, particularly, I think the crowd has cared, like the people that I grassroots grew this whole career with in the crowd, they cared, I feel they cared about me. Really, they did. Like, it wasn't just about that song or that tour. It was like, and when you do that, you just like, you feel so, it just feels so beautiful, you know. And I'm really lucky. That's pressure for me. They're like, hey, if you hung up, they're like, hey, if you need to like stop, like we like, don't worry about us. Like, we're, besides the fact that they're like, they more look after me. I bring the ideas, I make a bit of chaos, a bit of mess, you know, and they're the ones who like these days more and more
reorganize it.
Ironically, I'm becoming more of an artist further I go into my career.
It's awesome.
Like, you know, an all-in-one kind of person to branching out to being like, now I'm more and more
in your superpower,
directing and artist. Like, that's kind of where I'm at. I'm like, have immense help. So that's, wow, yeah, that's
well, you
beautiful.
know, another thing is like when you stand to gain, like lose something. A good story that I heard was Matthew McConaughey, and he talked about how he was like at his peak at doing rom-coms, but he was sick of it. And then he got an offer to do it for like, I think it was like 5 million. And he said no. Then it, like the next movie, then it was like 10 million. Then it went to, I think, 13 million. And you might need to fact check me here, but I think it went to 18 million. And he was like, I can't believe they're offering me this much money. But he was wanting to say no, so then he could go in and reinvent himself in his career and everything. And I think about that story because so often, sometimes we need to lose something to get to the next level of ourselves. So like your career, you need to lose something. You need to lose some money. You need to lose something that you're doing now that's not serving you, or like whatever it is. And then from there, it'll give you the space to be able to like ask the universe for the next thing and give yourself that space. Because you know nothing's going to happen for you if you just keep pounding every single day, touring, doing another show. And it's not until you have the breakthrough moment of like, oh my God, I stand to lose something. I could have lost something. I did lose something. I need to change something. I need to reinvent, rewrite, redirect, whatever it is. And then that's where your next level will be.
It makes me think about when I stopped touring in 2017. Yeah, I remember the conversation with my sister and my dad, and I was like, this pre-label, you know, but I was like, I need 1 week. I was like, I need a week. Like, I'm losing it. I need a week. You know, and Annika was like, you know, she was like, are you sure you need a week? Because she was like, she had this huge offer, the biggest festival offer I had on the table, and, you know, and wasn't sure if we had, because we didn't at the time have to go push it back a week, you know, which in the end everything worked out, of course. But I was like, I need a week, like, because I'm losing my mind here. Like, I need to just stop. I just need to stop for a week. And it was funny in that, you know, I took some time off, had surgery on both my eyes. And so I took a pretty big period of time off. For touring wise, it might have been 8 months, the longest I'd ever taken, right?
8 months. Wow.
Which is like, so here you are, you've grown things, you're playing the
in
ballet.
the middle of your career, 8 months off is a big deal.
Not River Stage, sorry, it was QPAC Theatre in Brisbane. It was, you know, I'm playing, sold out, like people finally coming with offers, vultures, and that was my vulture sign.
The vultures are coming in. Seagulls are everywhere.
And, you know, and I stopped touring, but then that gave us time to consider. I was lucky to have some major label stuff, some other independent labels, and I strongly considered signing because they were great offers. And thought about, you know, someone who I'm not like intimate with all his work, but I thought about Chance the Rapper, who at that time was, you know, the biggest independent artist in the world, and at least until a while after that was still independent, doing a lot for his city, and so totally different genre, but I liked his ethos. And that's when we decided to form, you know, the record label, and that couldn't have happened if I kept touring. We just wouldn't have had the
Exactly.
time. And so, and that, if you think about that decision, like the way, the degree of impact positively that's had, you know, like I lost out on touring. I mean, even the last couple of years, it's just so crazy because you just don't know, you know, as far as the last couple of years where we couldn't tour internationally and the whole world was shut down, like, it's like, okay, well, I'm going to get even more in shape, really work on my health, and stop somewhere for the first time, which is huge. Stayed in one place, not because I like the reasons for it, but I like the fact that, like, instead of being 50 and stopping for the first time, I like really got happy going to the farmers markets and having my little suburb and like doing my thing. Like it was good. I'm confident now. Like I enjoy the road and I know how to enjoy time back off the road. And you know, we're going back and I'm going to go do a place in London called the Brixton, and that's like 4,000 or 5,000 people. It's going to be my biggest overseas show ever. And that's on the back of not touring technically in the UK for 4 years. And that's just to say that there is some chance I could have had the mindset that I'm right. Haven't been able to tour, everything's going to, you know, but I didn't have that mindset. Didn't have the mindset that like it necessarily had to go that way. I didn't have the mindset that by stopping shows that was necessarily negative, you know. And if I went right, so stop touring, that's gonna be the end of things. I have to keep touring. If I did that in 2017, we wouldn't have formed the label, and I wouldn't, which I think I owe.
So it's funny because you directly like know this experience of like letting go of something to bring in a whole new something bigger, and you're in a space right now where it's been 10 years, you're reflecting right now, you're on the road, you're doing all the things, but again, like you're probably thinking and working out and all this downtime when you're just out there surfing and everything. It's like, I know that like what got me here today is not going to get me to where I want to be tomorrow. And so right now there's got to be something that changes. Yep.
I think it is easy. I mean, the thing you really stand to lose, like you said, is your passion for it. And you have, you know, it makes me think about those important times that maybe they just come around X amount of years, you know, like makes me think about 2015 was a pivotal moment because I remember really having to get clear about like what I was doing and what kind of why. And then I got clear on it, and it was like, you know, it was a real challenging moment. And that's where I'm in this little bit of a void at the moment, which, you know, thankfully makes me think of shout out Mamakin, Danielle, who I bumped into when I was in the desert on a surf trip in the northwest of Australia just about 6 months ago. And she's like, yeah, man, you're just in the void. You just got to like, just don't rush out of it. It's a beautiful place. And I think
that's amazing.
And, you know, and I think with such a big, with tour up ahead of me, and again, this very reflective time, just getting clear on what you stand to lose and what you keep wanting to like bring to the world with music. Because I do think it would be enough to say like, I just want to go. I think one of the ultimate things is that it makes me happy on a deep level. And I feel like it's contributing to the world in a way. I feel like there's a net positive result that people might feel heard. Like that would be enough. That's enough. That's probably the reason. That's probably like when you start peeling the onion, that's probably the reason for music. But getting and feeling really clear about that and seeing what does totally dim that passion. trying to not go down those paths where you feel like you're just
Cut
like
that bit
dying
out.
slowly.
You know, like, well, most people don't cut it out because those are the bits that pay money. And so that it always comes down to that, like, if I just didn't do that, I'd be so much happier, but I need it because it brings me a little bit of money, or like, you know, I hear that all the time. And so one of the ruthless things, and Morgan knows this, that I do in my career is like, I'll make a lot of money doing something, and I'm the first one to go like, no, we're not doing that anymore. And my team's like, what do you mean? This is what the thing. I'm like, we're just not doing it anymore. You know, like, and that's the end of it. And everyone always thinks that I'm mad, but I'm like, man, the madness is if I lost my passion for what I'm doing every day, because then it's all over.
Yeah. It's also to be said how, I guess we shouldn't be surprised. Like, that is the rhetoric, though. The rhetoric of largely, like, where we're at is that it's not taught in school, circling back. It's not taught in school, like, hey, your spirit might die. Like, do some shit and
so
have
true.
relationships, do things that, like, you want to wake up. You know, like I was last night unnecessarily, you know, up to like 1:30 because I was actually just too excited about a couple of things. I was just actually like, I was actually just ruminating. I'm yet to call my shaper. I was ruminating. I just had like a breakthrough on a new board design. And so I'm there like 1:30 in the morning trying to fall asleep, just laughing, going, you idiot, you know. But your heart's alive, and that's important because for me it's important, and why these trips, like these little hiatuses, are important for me because like there's nothing's kind of more distasteful for me than I think what people enjoy about our music, what I think ultimately is that there represents a certain amount of like adventure and real and rawness kind of thing. And like I have to fill my cup, you know, and lucky to have a team that like are pushing me to be like, dude, you gotta go fill your cup, however that is, you know. And that's like that's something. And filling my cup for me is like some aimless wandering where we want plans, and I want plans. At least I want plans, and I want things to be in order to curb some anxiety, and to be in control, you know,
to give you the freedom to have the chaos.
But literally, if you ask me what makes me like the things that evidently make me happy are things on the edge of chaos, you know. And so it's like, it's funny how we have this split. Well, I can only speak for myself, having this split where you like in one part you like want things to be safe, I want people around me to be safe, I want people to be happy, like how can I make this happen? And then as far as I go, the moment things are kind of too predictable, I'm like, okay, like I'm bored and I'm dying.
We need to mix this.
We need to mix this up. Kind of that same sentiment. I've definitely had lots of funny conversations. Been like, don't want to keep doing that. You know, like, nah, just don't want to keep doing that. There's so many fantastic arguments, and I mean that in a good way. So many great arguments, and yeah. But it just, do you feel? How do you feel like you've retained? How do you feel like you've retained growing up? You know, when you see things, those things you didn't see before. Let's say you take risks now and you can see more clearly what it means. Because there's plenty of risks I took where I didn't really know what it meant. I didn't know the full breadth. And then you get old enough or
wise enough
or, you know, or just like experiential, and you make the quantum leap and you go, oh, it means all of that. Is there a way that you continue to find that place in yourself?
Yeah, there is.
Risk it?
For me, it literally comes down to me putting myself in the space of not knowing anything again. So, like, it's for instance, like, you know, you take a big risk in something, and you've seen it happen before. It works out, and you can move forward, and you do something, and then what I never know is, what if I push myself into this space where I have no idea? Then all of a sudden, I've got none of my past knowledge to back myself or anything else. So now I'm stuck out there again, and that means I have to learn to swim again. It's like going into the deeper end, and then going like, how do I navigate this? And of course, I have the confidence in myself because I've got my lifetime of like what I have learned and the things that I've done and how I've been able to navigate things. So I do believe I put myself in the unknown once again, that I'll be able to somehow navigate myself through it. But for me, just to answer your question, like I literally have to keep putting myself in that space where I'm scared because I have no idea. And that's the space that I love. It's the only thing I know, actually.
Yeah, that's a really special way to put it. It's that habit, isn't it? It's just a habit to keep being willing, to keep being willing. I think having your reasons as to why seems important. And
for sure.
like I said, having that personal drive that, like, at the end of the day, from what it sounds like to me, is that, like, you like doing that for the sense of, like, there is a certain amount of adventure, and of course and running that gauntlet is something that actually brings a bit of excitement in your life.
Yeah.
People, I think, are scared. Like, I think we have to, maybe it was Joe Rogan who said, like, basically you have to invite a certain amount of like conflict. In this term he meant like challenge and struggle. In, like, for him it was training. Whether it was running or something that was like, I have to invite that in and do that, otherwise I'll create it in the rest of my life. And that's what I think one of the things I'm immensely thankful for with music is there's, like, enough, I think there's enough chaos in it that it helps me not invite too much of it in other areas of my life. There's enough natural, it's such an intense thing. And, like, horses for courses, I think it does take an intense sort of personality to want to be independent and run your own business and do those sort of things.
Of course.
But immensely rewarding. And we're in a pretty funny time, particularly in Western culture. We're in a pretty funny time when it comes to, the world at our fingertips. And maybe it was this guy who's this awesome jiu-jitsu dude, and he was talking about how, like, he was like, I choose to struggle. Like, I'm choose to be here struggling because I'm fortunate enough to choose that.
Yeah, and you're privileged enough.
I'm privileged enough
to choose the struggle.
Because it's like either you've got it and you are struggling, and people do have real struggles, and there is, like, talk about now, particularly in Oz, I don't know what the rest of the world economy is like, but my inkling is, like, that's real. There's 100% real, and so if you're lucky enough to not be an immediate thing, then, like, putting yourself in that position, like you said, putting yourself in that position again.
I even heard someone say the other day, it's like, if you're privileged enough to take on board other people's struggle, so it's not only yourself. So if you're in a position where you can listen to someone if they're having a breakdown, or you can, like, help them out if they're in time of need or something like that, it's like you're privileged enough not only to handle your own struggles, but to actually handle other people's struggles and hear them out. And I thought that was, for me, was very profound.
It's amazing, and I'm sure there's people who've been trying to write about this for a long time. You're me sitting here absolutely exhausted. But it's funny, my back. Either I'm a bit sore from getting slammed, like surfing or running or this. Either I'm a bit sore from that, or I'm sore because I haven't done enough activity. And that just touches again. It's just like that same, for me, it's at least, it comes back to that same thing. It's like either your knees are sore because you've been running, or your knees are sore because you've been sitting too much. Like that is wow, like,
you can use that for your whole life.
That is the laughable situation we face. The hilarious.
I think that, like, am I overwhelmed and overworked and stressed because I've been working too much or too little?
Yeah.
Because I think sometimes I'm like, well, if I worked more, I would have more work, and then I would have to market less and advertise less, and then, like, I would have more clients, and I think about it all the time. I'm like, am I doing too much or too little? Because burnout can come from both.
We definitely, I hear you, yeah. Particularly if you're a personality, like, that's something I was happy this summer to recognize. Like, I need a project as far as, like, whether it's just a little one, whether it's about, like, I ran 11.4 Ks with my brother. It was, maybe 400 meters elevation, and, he's training for an ultra. He's like,
wow.
He's that's what he does, and I was training enough to do that with him, and that was my little thing. That was my little project. I'm proud to say I got past. Instead of hate filing my receipts, I now file my receipts happily. I even enjoy it a little bit. That took me 10 years. That's a big deal. Like, I did it. Like, that's like that. That's the stuff in my journal. People like, was Jack Johnson playing with Jack Johnson in your journal? It's like, yeah, but filing my receipts, that was a real, like,
that was there.
Overcoming this thing. And man, that's. I mean, there's this guy I love reading. This Buddhist dude, Thich Nhat Hanh, I believe is how you pronounce his name. Sadly passed, and beautiful writer. I carry his little Buddhist book with me all the time. I love just reading it over a coffee and I pull to a random page. And the art of rest. I have so much free time. Seldom am I restful. I technically have a lot of free time, but I'm like such a switched on sort of personality, and it's on me to switch off,
Yeah.
Or like you just said, maybe if you recognize that you need to, scratch that itch kind of thing. Do the thing. I've sat down yesterday and started transcribing part for a new poetry book. Like that for me just brings me such a cathartic thing. It's technically work, but I'm like, but it makes me feel like, okay.
Well, that's what I mean. And so then all of a sudden it's like you're burnt out because you're not doing the thing. And then when you do the thing, you're like, oh, I'm back in the zone.
I'm tired.
I'm doing the thing.
I'm stressed. But at least
I have that exact same personality, man. Like exactly the same.
I love it. It's true. No, it's, our knees are sore when we run, and our knees get too sore from being sedentary, so we must find, that. But the art of restfulness, man, it's something I'm hoping as time passes, I get a little, that's, it's fun to have these things, those are the things I think that keep your passion alive, is these little, could just be, like getting past my receipt issue, man. I just would let them pile up, and I was just so against them. Such resistance to them. That's like a big thing for me, that makes me really happy too. And people would just be like, are you sure that's a big thing? It's like, yeah, it's a big thing, and so it's like having these very trivial little milestones in your life too. And far out, the people you see, the people you see who really, your health and your like happiness is too broad a term, but it's like, but in the very least, your health in a really holistic sense, when you're pain free, when we're lucky enough to be sitting here, not, thinking of, shout out to my younger brother Rourke, who's, was living it, and he's never done his ankle skating. He's like, incredible skater. My stage manager, and he just fractured his ankle in 2 places on his birthday. Wow. On a birthday skate, and he's just one of the most freakish skaters you've ever seen. But it's like, that makes you for a moment think. It doesn't make me think he shouldn't have gone skating. I think he has to do the thing. Yeah. Has to do the thing. Yeah. There's risk involved, and he's going to go do it. And lucky to have parents that literally didn't want us, like, for example, we're like, we don't want to risk you in the system. But they'll like go and clear the stairs skating at like 7. Like they'll like go do it, like, so happy to have that combination. But yeah, it's always nice to return. Sometimes I find myself with a lot of mental noise, and I'm like, okay, like, am I in one piece? Like, am I like pain free? Like, that's in the sense of like, am I not just dealing with anything chronic? How many people you see who are dealing with that? So it's just, those little things, balancing those things out, they are, man, so lucky. Very, very lucky.
Ziggy, thanks for being on the show.
Joy, a pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Good conversation. I feel like it needs to be, we need to catch up another time.
Let's do it post-tour.
Yeah,
I can finish, post-tour. I can go on the world tour. We'll touch back in like 8 months or something.
And I feel like you'll have a complete different outlook. Like, oh yeah, nah, man, I just want to go and never do nothing again.
Maybe I can maybe have like a mohawk and nipple piercings, and we'll just see like, and what I'll do is
change your music.
I'll come on and I'll be like, man, I'm, like, I'll come on and basically be talking about how I'm just ready to totally quit it, go back to surfing, and that'll last for 2 months, and then I'll be ready to do on tour again.
Yeah. Thank you so much for being on the show, man. I'm going to share your links and everything down below so everyone can find your music and they can blast it in their car and everything else. So Talk to you soon.
Thanks, Joe.